Namaste, everyone. Let us sit straight, prepare our bodies and minds for the upcoming discussion. Start with Shanti Mantra. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahavidyam Karavavahai. Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Okay. Excuse me. So today we will start a discussion on with the help of a text as a skeleton. The reason we go with the text is that it provides a sequence of thought and a context for discussing the concept of Nishta. Different texts deal with the sadhana, the sadhya, the practice, the result, the various spiritual aspects from different angles. But this text that we are taking now is called Sadhana Panchakam. And I find it's one of my favorite compositions of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. And I feel this is more relevant to go into it in detail, and it provides an excellent skeleton for weaving our discussions around the concept of Nishta, which is the topic of our session. So Nishta, abidance and knowledge. It's not only knowledge, it's basically the bridging of the gap between what the tradition tries to teach us and how we understand, and also bridging the gap between the right understanding and the right living according to the understanding. When we come to a wisdom tradition that has its source in the Supreme Being itself, in the form of Veda, Apaurusheyam Vakyam Vedam, means Veda is knowledge in the form of words that was not written by any person. It was captured from the source of the universe itself and revealed through the rishis in verbatim as it is. So Apaurusheyam means it is not composed by a person. And Vedas are eternal and Vedas are unlimited. Ananto vai Vedaha. So they are categorized into 4 categories: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Shama Veda, Atharva Veda. They are 4 categorizing, but it is not the number of Vedas. So the Vedas are endless, infinite. As the possibilities of manifestations are infinite, the Vedas are also infinite. Veda is the sound form of knowledge, where the sound and the meaning are together, are eternally associated. For example, when we see the meaning of the word Om, the commentary on the word Om, in Yoga Sutra, there is a huge discussion about the word and the meaning and the association between them. So there is a conventional association and an eternal association. So the whole discussion goes on there. We will come to that. So the reason for this is when we go to a tradition that is anadi, that is eternal, like this Vedic tradition, it is a more mature way to see what that tradition has to give us, rather than how we can use that tradition for our own little petty goals, our own personal little petty objectives and goals. and for our little petty desires, to see how I can use that. Instead of that, if we go with an attitude of surrender and Shraddha and see what the Veda has to give us, what this Vaidika Dharma has to give us, what this Sanatana Dharma has to give us, what this wisdom tradition, why this wisdom tradition is here, and where does it want to take us. No, if we go with that attitude of surrender and Shraddha, then we will be able to derive the intended and the highest benefit out of it. So, for that, this sadhana panchakam, the 5 verses on sadhana, it's also called a sopana panchakam, the staircase, the 5 steps. It will be very, if we go with that, for that, this sopana panchakam, sadhana panchakam, upadesha panchakam, these are very various names for this text. It will be, giving us the that needed structure around which we can organize all the learnings that we do, and it gives us the right direction, takes us step by step to the highest goal, which is moksha, which is realizing our own true nature. So they say the story, the story about the sadhana panchakam is, they say that before Sri Adi Shankaracharya left this world, the disciples asked him for one last teaching, because it's never enough. Every time when a master opens his floodgates of grace, divine grace in the form of teaching, there is always a gem, and every gem is unique. Though the point is the same, every time he does, it's unique. So when they request him for one final teaching, he gives the entire road map for an individual from the point to go up to the ultimate destination called Jivan Mukti. Here, sadhana, what is sadhana? Sadhana means the means by which I achieve my end. If I want to go from one place to another, the sadhana is a medium of transport, two-wheeler, four-wheeler, whatever, public transport, walking, right? Sadhya is the goal. Here, in this context, sadhya is moksha or atma jnana. Self-realization or liberation is the sadhya or the attainable goal. The purushartha here is, the sadhya here is moksha or liberation. For that, the sadhana, what is the sadhana? So, let us call it the liberating spiritual practice. Okay, I am going to call it as the liberating spiritual practice. The trajectory or the path of the liberating, the various steps in the liberating spirituality. Why I am using the word liberating spirituality is because there is also binding spirituality. Spiritual materialism. We have discussed it in various situations. And this sadhana panchakam has been handled by a lot of acharyas in a very traditional manner, with word by word meaning into the Sanskrit and into all the ramifications of the words used there, to give it the correct traditional intended understanding. But what I am I'm going to do here in our Nishta class is to see how we can derive the teaching from sadhana panchakam in a way that is relevant for everyone, even for those who are not from the Vedic tradition, and even for those who are not adhikaris or those who don't have the qualification to study the Veda. Not all are allowed to study the Veda in the traditional way. Now, because of internet, everybody has access to it, is different. But to go through the Vedic learning process in the original intended way is meant only for a small section of people who are supposed to study that, preserve that, and they have a lifestyle and all that. And it is decided only based on birth, and that is totally okay. That is not a problem. That is the quality control of the system. Every system has its own quality control. So the tradition's own method of quality control is this, and we are nobody to go and question that. That is totally okay, because we did not create the tradition. The one who created the tradition has kept this quality control, and we have to respect that. So that is all right. But even though the ritualistic portion of the Veda, the ritualistic aspect of the Vedic tradition, in all its aspect may not be accessible for everyone. Veda being the mother of the universe, Veda Mata we say, no? Veda being like a mother. And all beings are its children, not only humans. In all the beings are the children of the universal mother, the divine mother. So it takes care. The tradition that is based on the Veda takes care of every section of society and everyone. There is always something for everyone. And when it comes to the point of spiritual liberation, when it comes to the point of moksha, moksha is common for all. Everyone is equally eligible for the teachings on moksha. One may not be eligible for certain mantras and rituals, but the same person who is not eligible for the mantras and rituals, excuse me, same person who may not be eligible for the mantras and rituals is absolutely unquestionably eligible for liberation, and to imbibe the teachings of the teachings meant for liberating the soul, teachings meant for revealing the nature of the self, provided that person has viveka vairagya and the sadhana chatushtayam that we have discussed before, the fourfold qualifications for a person to study Vedanta, right? So if the person has viveka, vairagya, one-pointedness, ekagrata and all that, that person is qualified to study the teachings for self-realization, and it will work on that person no matter what is the background, and no matter their level of, no matter their birth-based qualification to study the Veda or not. Whether that person has gone through the entire process of the karma kanda or the ritualistic religious life or not, if the person's mind is prepared, that person will attain moksha when he surrenders to the due process of the teaching of Vedanta. Hence, I'm going to make an attempt here to share my understanding of sadhana panchakam in a way that is more universally relevant and in a way that is practically applicable with an interpretation that can be practically applied in today's context for all sections of the society, whoever has shraddha in the tradition. Okay. With this introduction, let me proceed with the text. The first verse goes like this: Vedo nityam adhiyatam tad uditam karma swanushtiyatam teneshasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papaugah paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrihat turunam vinirgamyatam. This is the first verse. So there are 5 verses and there are 8 teachings or sadhanas in each verse. Every verse is considered as a step, or you can say there are 8 steps in every stage, 5 stages, and in each stage there are 8 steps. From one stage to the next stage is like a quantum leap. Okay, so you become mature up to a point, and the next take the first quantum leap, then next second quantum leap, like that, right? So it is something like a level of attainment. So the first verse takes us to the level of attainment called readiness for renunciation. It takes us to that level. Sorry. Nijagrihat turunam vinirgamyatam takes us there. So how does it go? The first sadhana, Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. Study the Veda, study, recite, chant with understanding the Veda daily. Now, not all are qualified to study the Veda. Even those who are qualified by birth and they have taken Upanayanam and everything and are qualified to study the Veda, don't study the Veda. They are all busy becoming software engineers and going to California. So, this Veda Nityam Adhiyatam itself is gone. Okay. And the moment you cross the sea, you lose your eligibility to be a Vaidika. You lose your eligibility. You have to come back and do some prayashchitam. All that is there in the tradition. So, Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam, the meaning, the direct meaning is study the Veda daily. Tad uditam karmasvanushthiyatam. Sorry. Properly follow the various religious actions prescribed in the Veda according to the proper method. When you are doing them, do those acts as an act of worship, and whatever the results you are getting from them, offer it to the Lord in the form of worship. Okay. Offer the results of your actions, your sadhanas, your efforts, both religious and secular activities. Offer the results of all your actions to the Lord as worship. Vedo Nityamadhiyatam taduditam karmasvanushthiyatam tena ishashya vidhiyatam apachitihi. For what? And one more is there. Kamye matistyajatam. Do not try to manipulate situations in order to satisfy your desires, in order to achieve your personal desires. Now, this whole thing is a lifestyle. From Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam to Kamye Matistyajatam is a package. I will call it as a religious life that is tuned for spiritual liberation. A religious life tuned for spiritual liberation. Why am I putting it like this? Because you can also have a religious life that is tuned for happy samsara. Is there something called as a happy samsara? No. From the point of view of a Viveki or a Vairagi, there is no happy samsara. But a relatively more harmonious, wholesome life, we can say. When you live a properly religious life in tune with the spiritual, revealed spiritual knowledge, in tune with the spiritual laws of the universe, it is possible to have a relatively more wholesome life than the gentry who are completely ignorant of the spiritual aspect of the universe. A person who is in tune with the spiritual laws of the universe is more likely to live a probability on, it's only probability. Okay. It's more likely to live a more harmonious and satisfactory life in a sustained way for a longer period when compared to a layman who has no idea of anything, any spiritual principles that govern life. There are, these prayers we do in Sandhya Pashyema Charadashadam, Jivema Charadashadam, Jivama Charadashadam, Modama Charadashadam, Nandama Charadashadam. Let us live for 100 years. Let us enjoy for 100 years. Let us see auspicious things for 100 years. We have prayers like that. So a person who lives according to the Vaidika Dharma and takes care of, let us say, Dharma, the one who understands Dharma and who understands certain subtle laws that govern our life. From the yoga point of view, we can say, for example, there is something called Swara Yoga. Your right nostril, left nostril breathing, and then, the certain certain astronomical movements of the day and night, the circadian rhythm. For example, a very simple thing like circadian rhythm, we know also scientifically, if you tune your activities in a day according to sunrise and sunset, I'm talking about a normal tropical country, I'm not talking about Nordic countries where there is no sun for 6 months. Sorry. So whenever there is a proper sunrise and sunset, if you tune your activities according to the sunrise and sunset, and then tune your eating according to the appetite and the digestion patterns of your body, certain rhythms of nature, you are likely to be more disease free, and you are likely to have a better sense of well-being than a person who lives chaotically, or a person who tries to impose their personal fancy on the rhythm of life and try to enjoy life without respecting the hidden natural rhythms of life both in the body and outside the body, right? So the same logic here, when it comes to the spiritual laws of the universe, the body of knowledge that connects us to the unknown, the unknowable in the sense, the unknowable dimension of this universe, which is not accessible for my perception, which is not accessible for my scientific investigation, that that zone of the universe, the knowledge about that zone of the universe, that dimension of the universe, is available in the Veda. And based on the knowledge of that dimension of that universe, which is unknowable for my perception and scientific investigation, that knowledge, based on that knowledge, that is an entire traditional way of life and a lot of recommendations. Based on the Veda, there is Smritis, and based on the Smritis, and then we have the Puranas, Smriti, Smriti, Purana. That is why for Sri Shankaracharya, when there is a sloka which appreciates, which venerates Sri Shankaracharya as Shruti Shruti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram. There is a sloka. So the Shruti, Smriti, and Purana, they go together. So what is not accessible for people directly in the Shruti, the same wisdom is available in the Smritis, watered down, and more watered down and more accessible and more assimilable is in the Puranas. So it's like it helps you, and all the commentaries and the traditional interpretation traditions, and then the sampradayas which sustain the various practices that regulate our everyday religious life, right? So all that gives us in a very practicable capsule an access to that unknowable dimension of the universe, and the link is the Veda. I may not know the Veda directly, but I am seeing this living tradition, this unbroken living tradition, this eternal tradition that has been preserved by the Rishi Paramparas that is all around me. So I can always take refuge in the various aspects of it, and I can always take refuge in a sampradaya that will guide me through certain way of life, that will recommend to me a certain way of life that is suitable for me. And I have, through that way of life, I have an access to that knowledge that connects me in a harmonious way to the unknowable spiritual laws of the unknown dimension of the universe. And the results that come out of these are adrishta, cannot be seen. It gives a certain form of punya. It works like secret service. You don't know the secret service is there, but suddenly, when the secret service is working properly, there are no bomb blasts, there are no some destructive activities that have been happening. Suddenly there is a reduction in certain foreign attacks, and there's a reduction in cyber attacks, there is a reduction in engineered revolts. There is more, the system seems to be more consistent and things seem to work. And now behind that, there is the secret service. You don't see them working, but you see the result. When they are not working, you will see a lot of things that are not in place. For example, when the dharma in a land, when the humanity follows dharma, one of the indicators is no major climatic disharmony. See, the world is of a changing nature. There is always going to be some climatic event or the other. But within the given conditions, the rhythms of nature will be more harmonious and more predictable. And there will not be too many extremes. Extreme rain, extreme heat, extreme cold, untimely rain, untimely sunshine, untimely tornadoes, and these kind of disasters. So these kind of things are usually more when the dharma of the land has gone down. So when the dharma is upheld in the way it should be, in all its aspects, spiritual aspect, social aspect, personal aspect, then the climatic rhythms are more harmonious. This is one of the indicators that we see from the scriptures. Okay, this is a verifiable thing. It's a verifiable thing, but you cannot prove that. You cannot say that it is because of dharma. You cannot statistically correlate. It is only taken based on faith. So these four lines in this sadhana panchakam, Vedo nityam adiyatam, study the Veda daily and perform the actions prescribed in the Veda in the way they should be done, in an attitude of devotion and surrendering the results to Ishvara. And refrain from materialistic spirituality, refrain from trying to do spiritual techniques and activities and the rituals for the sake of satisfying your personal desires. Totally give up that personal desire project, completely give it up. Don't access spiritual laws for personal gains. So these four together constitute a spiritually liberating religious life. Okay. Now we will go into the more detail into this Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam. What does it practically tell us? It practically tells us the importance of surrendering to a spiritual tradition, importance of Shraddha. The Vedo Nityam Adhiyatam Tad Udidam Karmasvanushtiyatam basically tells us study the Veda and do the rituals and the actions ordained in the Veda. I can go into that, what is Veda, then what are the Nitya Karma, Naimitika Karma, all that I can go. But all that you already have it all over the internet. But I am trying to give an interpretation here. What it tries to tell us is the point here is it is important to surrender to a spiritual tradition with faith. Have faith in the spiritual tradition that is based on the Veda. Have faith in the spiritual way of life and the recommendations for our everyday life that comes from the Vedic tradition, and follow them diligently without likes and dislikes, in an attitude of surrender, in an attitude of faith. So develop that faithful religious life where you are having the attitude that this is true spiritual knowledge and it is here for my own welfare, and I surrender to it, and I allow that body of spiritual wisdom and the practices to mold and shape me and purify me. Right? How I go and take a dip in the river Ganga for purification, you go to Mother Ganga in Haridwar and then you take a dip and come. Like that, this Ganga represents the whole body of knowledge, the tradition of the wisdom tradition that is flowing. So, like how I take a dip in the Ganga, every aspect of my life, I must dip it in this river, the river of wisdom called the Vedic tradition, with faith, with surrender. That's what it says. Why it is important? Because sorry, why it is important is because the unknowable and the unconscious dimension that rules the most important aspects of my life, my birth, where I am born, what kind of parents and society I am born in, and what circumstances I will face in the coming days, and what kind of karmas will manifest from time to time. Is the good karma going to manifest in a context, or bad karma going to manifest? I don't know. So it is a whole thing inside. It's like a lottery. Every moment of my life, every moment of the day is like a lottery, basically. And after this death, I have absolutely, I only know that I am here. Before my birth, how I was, I don't know. After my death, I don't know how I was. And the spiritual, all the spiritual schools say, and all the masters, all of them say, there is a life before birth and the life after death. And I need to have faith on that. And I can only have faith on that because I cannot know that. You may say that through special psychedelic experiences or through yogic experiences, through Kundalini or whatever. If you're getting some trance, through a trance or altered states of consciousness, I can see what happens after death. These are all personal experiences, and these are all not pramana. These are all not valid knowledge, because each one has different personal experiences. It might as well be hallucination. So, we need an impersonal body of knowledge that is consistent from so many levels. So, when we want to go into the consistency of the Vedic tradition, it's an entire discussion altogether. So, I am assuming that you all have faith in the Vedic tradition. And so the Veda being Apaurushayam and having a very systematic structure that preserves that knowledge, and it is unimaginably sophisticated. From a common point of view, when you see the rigor of the tradition that preserves the authenticity of the knowledge and the practices from the time of its revelation, from the rishi through whom it was revealed in our age until now, the way it is preserved and the structure that preserves that wisdom in its original form is unimaginably sophisticated. If you go and study that properly, you will be amazed at the level of sophistication. It's the scientific rigor is nothing compared to that. It's an entire lifestyle, entire hundreds and thousands of families over hundreds of generations preserving an entire lifestyle to keep and preserve this knowledge. There are people who have died to preserve this knowledge. People who have braved invasions and centuries of invasion and an onslaught to preserve this knowledge and to keep it alive for us. For nothing, for absolutely no personal gain, as they have done it as an yajna. So now we are able to have access to this sadhana. Panchakam itself is the result of sacrifice of so many generations of people, who have withstood the Islamic invasions, who have withstood the onslaught of the British and the other, Portuguese inquisitions and whatnot, and all this current anti-Sanatana Dharma onslaught, political onslaught that is going on. With all that, still we have access to this wisdom. It's so easy. You go to the internet and type Vedanta, you will get thousands and thousands of pages with with the knowledge available. That is, this much of accessibility is there because it was preserved until now with a very rigorous lifestyle, with families living only for preserving this knowledge in its original form. And there are still families, hundreds of families, thousands of families, Dvija Brahman families who are dedicated to preserving this, and their only job is this, nothing else: to preserve the rituals, to preserve the knowledge, to preserve the chanting tradition, and to preserve the methods of interpretation, and to preserve the schools of commentary. This is all their life. It's nothing else. Generation after generation, they preserve this knowledge, and this unbroken accessibility is there. So if we go and do a little bit, even a little bit of research, we will be overwhelmed by the level of tyaga, the sacrifice, and with the level of dedication and the sophistication that is involved in preserving this knowledge. And no other tradition has this consistency that the Vedic tradition has. No other tradition. Vedic tradition means it's like a huge umbrella. It's like an ocean, which includes so many other, where all the tributaries of the various small traditions, various schools and sampradayas and everything, schools of philosophy, the folk practices, everything is integrated into it. It's like a huge ocean. Hindu Mahasamudram, they say. So, I take refuge in the Vedic tradition and the knowledge it gives and the various practices it recommends through one sampradaya where I am able to have access. This is the most important part. Tad uditam karmaswanushthiyatam. For that, I can interpret it as Vedo nityam adiyatam means have the practical interpretation I am giving is have faith in the Vedic tradition as your access to the spiritual laws of the universe and the spiritual knowledge that governs this universe. Okay. For a religious life. To guide you to lead a religious life that is in tune with the spiritual reality. The tradition that helps me to lead a religious life that is in tune with the spiritual reality. Blind faith will not do. Faith that is in tune with the right knowledge is important. Faith that is in tune with pramana is important. So I approach the Vedic tradition with pramana buddhi. Whatever knowledge I am having access to, I treat it as a valid knowledge, which means I surrender to it as true. You may be asking, is it not blind faith? I will ask you, is it blind faith? If you say, I open my eyes and I see a blue box in front of me. There is a blue box in front of you. You open your eyes, I ask you, what do you see? There is a blue box in front of me. How do you know? Of course, I can see that. Now, how do you see that? You see that means you are accepting what your eyes are revealing to you. You check with another person, you check with another person, all of them agree there is a blue box. So, and over a period of time, you have come to understand that the eyes reveal the color and shape of an object. Through the eyes, I am able to decipher the color and shape of the object within the visible spectrum. Of course, a dog will see it differently, a cat will see it differently because their visual spectrum is different. But for us, for common knowledge, okay? So you are basically surrendering your understanding to the tool of knowledge called the visual faculty. You are treating the visual faculty as valid knowledge with respect to colors and shapes. So similarly, you are treating, this is called pramana buddhi. So similarly, you are treating the Veda and the knowledge revealed through the Veda and the practices recommended by the tradition as absolutely truly valid knowledge, which can be known only through the Veda, through the tradition. It cannot be known through or validated or invalidated through your perception or science or your experience. My experience is based on my conditioning. So my experience, my personal experience cannot validate or invalidate the Veda. So the Veda as a pramana overrides and adds a dimension to my perception and inference and scientific knowledge. It adds another angle. And it is not contradictory. It does not contradict whatever comes as a properly comes in the Vedic tradition should be understood in a way that it does not contradict my perceptual experience or my scientific knowledge and logical knowledge. It does not contradict that. It is not available for my perception and scientific knowledge. And it adds a dimension. It might add a dimension to it, though it may not contradict it, or it may show totally another angle to the whole thing. And whatever the Vedic tradition or the knowledge is dealing with, that knowledge is not accessible for my perception and logic and scientific investigation. So this is what abadita anadikata. That is what is apaurushaya vakyam vedam. So that is the whole point of this Vedic knowledge. So I approach this traditional body of wisdom, spiritual wisdom, and the recommendations, the practical recommendations, with an attitude of pramana buddhi, like how I operate my eyes with a complete faith that my eyes are revealing the object in front of me, where I completely accept the validity of my visual perception. With that kind of attitude and level of acceptance, I approach the tradition, the Vedic tradition. That would be the summary of the first two instructions. Vedo nityam adiyatam taduditam karmaswanushthiyatam. So if I approach with that much of Shraddha, obviously I am not going to have any hesitation in adopting whatever is the recommendation given to be by my Acharya who represents the tradition for me, who comes in a sampradaya. That is where the role of a guru or an Acharya comes, who represents that sampradaya, who is educated in that sampradaya in a proper way, and who lives, and somewhere he has, if I don't have access to the Veda, that Acharya has access to the Veda, either directly or indirectly. I must be able to trace that access to somebody who has a reasonably perfect abidance in the Vedic way of life. I must be able to trace that practice to somebody who had, that recommendation, whatever I am taking from a teacher, I must be able to trace it through a sampradaya to a source that is directly connected with the Veda. Then that practice is okay. Not some, what happens is, in our spiritual traditions, there are two things going on. One is called Vaidika, another is called Laukika. Laukika means based on the world, based on the sentiment of the people and the emotions of the people. A few things get added here and there, added and deleted here and there, and it becomes more and more, convoluted over time. And always any knowledge kind of dissipates over a period of time. So it gets convoluted over a period of time. One famous, we have this famous joke, that funny story that says about that cat, a person who ties a cat in the ancestor ritual for his passed away father. So a person was going to offer shraddha, or the pinda, or the offerings for the ancestors during a new moon day, and the shraddha day came where the tithi, the death anniversary of his father. So he wanted to do the offering. He called the priest. So the priest makes a huge list of things. This is to be done, that is to be done. So the son looks at the list and says, "Where is the cat?" Says, "What cat?" Says, "Every time my father does a ritual, this ancestor ritual for his father, he always tied a cat." He says, "What? That is not there in the scriptures at all." Then he says, "I don't know. I have seen my father always tying the cat." Then you inquire the mother. He said, "Yeah, I have also seen." He said that his father has tied the cat. Then he went and discussed with his grandmother. Then they found out that during the grandfather's time, there was a cat in the house that was going around and knocking off all the articles for the rituals. You have these small cups with the grains and things like that. So the cat was coming and knocking them out, knocking the milk out, knocking the rice out, and coming and licking things. The cat is not supposed to smell the offerings. Then it becomes unqualified for offering. So he said, "Okay, tie the cat." So till the ritual is over, the cat will be tied to some table or something. And then after the ritual is over, they will remove the cat. So the father grew up seeing the cat, sorry, being tied. So he said, "Okay, let me tie the cat." So he just brought a cat and tied it. and thought this is part of the ritual. So this is called Laukika addition. There may be some, because of some social conditions or because of some temporary situations, a few aspects might have gotten added, and we will be making a big deal out of it and following it very diligently. So, because we are shooting in the blind, because there is no proper study of Shastra, most of us are shooting in the blind, and you get very scared when you do these pujas and rituals. You get very scared because it is unknown. People tend to get scared, and then they try to overdo certain, certain, I would not say redundant, certain trivial details they tend to overdo, and then they lose attention on the main things. And when you go from insecurity and fear, it is no need to go from insecurity and fear. So in this context, when we are following with faith, it is important not to go from insecurity and fear, but to go from an intention to know better. So we have to investigate, we have to study, we have to inquire and ask questions to those who have studied properly, and then go with the recommendations that are rooted in the Shastric knowledge. Now, for example, the rules regarding Rudraksha, for example, wearing a Rudraksha, there will be a lot of exaggerations, and there will be a lot of different recommendations by different people. Then they will say, when you keep idols in the house, you should not keep two Devis next to each other. Like that. In another place, they will say you should not keep two male deities in the same place. You should not keep too many deities in the same place, in the same puja room. You should have only 2 or 3 deities, not too many. And then there is Panchayatana puja. So when we go to these things, people get scared with a lot of stuff. But if you go and ask a Pandita, a person who has studied the Shastra properly, if they give a recommendation, or when they say such and such thing is to be done, or such and such thing is not to be done, a prohibition, a recommendation or a prohibition, they will be able to give a pramana. They will say, according to this rule of this Shastra and based on this logic, this is the recommendation according to this sampradaya. For example, in Vedic rituals, we have what is called Grihya Sutras. We have Apastamba Sutra, Ashwalayana Sutra, and Bodhayana Sutra, and things like that. So, based on that, they will say this sutra recommends like this. For naming a child, these are the rules according to this sutra. So, the Panditas, the masters who have studied properly, if you go and trace, they will be able to access the original recommendation and from there derive a practical advice for you or me for a particular context that is not contradicting to the original wisdom, and also accommodating the everyday demands in a way at least I will know that I am doing it for the society and family sentiments, or am I doing it for the spiritual laws that govern this ritual. At least I will know that. So then I will know what to adopt and what to skip. I may say, okay, it is a cultural sentiment. I can respect the cultural sentiment and I can include this. Or I have a certain uh, difficulty or a crisis with respect to time and resources. Then I will know what to prioritize, what to give more priority to, and what to give less priority to. So these kind of things require study and discussion, and access to the people who are properly trained in the knowledge, in the Vedic knowledge that governs that department of religious life. So we need to, through regular satsanga, through regular study, and through listening to discourses and to discussion with a proper priest and all that, we have to find a way to develop a certain religious way of living that includes all aspects of our life, that includes our everyday routine, physical routine, that includes our diet, that includes our entertainment, what is okay, to what extent is okay, that includes the rules that govern our indulgences. It's okay if I want to, for example, if I like, for example, if I want to have some onion and garlic based food, that is comes under prohibited food. It is prohibited for certain groups, it is not prohibited for certain groups, like that. So let us say onion and garlic is prohibited. So if I cannot abstain from onion and garlic completely, what are the days it is very important that I avoid onion and garlic? I will not include onion and garlic on Ekadashi. For example, we have this Puratasi Masam, in Tamil month called Puratasi. There is this memes. Once Puratasi Masam comes, there are these memes going about people not having access to non-veg, and in the Hindu homes not cooking non-veg. Now, there are the Hindu groups who are usually non-vegetarians, who are meat-eating communities. Most of the communities, they avoid meat during Puratasi Masam. Okay, so there is a lot of jokes about that. And there is also a joke about the Puratasi Masam ending and then the Aipasi starting, and then everybody rushing to have some meat-based dish, and there are jokes about that. So that is that's a very cute thing, because they are used to having meat, but then they are allowing themselves with Shraddha to abstain from meat eating and cooking meat in home or eating outside during that 1 month as a spiritual discipline. You also have that in Christians. It's called Lent. During the Lent, they will not eat any meat, they will not consume any milk, and then the animal products. They will live only on grains and something like that. So different Christian denominations have Lent in different ways. It's also in Eastern Orthodox, they call it as the post. It's a certain kind of fasting, a kind of a ritualistic fasting where they restrict their food as a way of penance, right? So this is there everywhere, but the original principle is based on why that this time of the year and why, and all that, the recommendations will be based, it will be given in the smritis. So we have the smritis that are based on the Veda, then we have the Brahmanas and all that. The Brahmanas and Aranyakas, the ritualistic portion of the Vedas. From there comes the smritis, the Dharma Shastras and everything, and from there you have the entire tradition. So all of us cannot go and study all these things, but it is important to understand that I need to include as much as possible. Now I am coming to the conclusion. I need to include as much as possible within my means, as much as I can, certain elements of religious life in my everyday life, certain elements of religious discipline that is based on the spiritual wisdom of the Vedic tradition, which I have access to through a proper teacher or who comes in a proper sampradaya. From there, I have taken a few recommendations and I have incorporated it into my everyday life, and I implement it. And I have some activities that I do deliberately in order to develop my access to grace, access to the divine grace, in order to open up my life, various aspects of my life, my mind and my body, and my surroundings and my family and my life to the influence of divine grace. I incorporate certain religious practices in my everyday life. So that is this is the whole point. So injunctions and prohibitions. Injunctions means things to be done. For example, lighting an oil lamp during sunrise and sunset. A simple thing. Lighting an oil lamp and then offering some naivedyam or a flower or something, and ringing the bell. Lighting the oil lamp and ringing the bell and offering something during sunrise and sunset. It's a very simple practice. This everybody can do. And doing some fasting on Ekadashi or Pradosham or Amavasya, Paurnami, some kind of fasting that I can accommodate based on my health. That's something everybody can do. And taking initiation in some kind of a mantra. If I don't have initiation, doing some nama japa. Whenever I light that lamp, I do some nama japa. Taking shower once or at least once, or if I can, 2 times in a day, if the climate and my health permits and my resources permit. If not, at least wash my hands, feet. These saucha related things. I follow certain things and I do some mantra chanting or shlokas, some parayana, reciting Vishnu Sahasranama, things like this. Whatever, some kind of spiritual activity, I make it as part of my routine, and then I some kind of discipline and restrictions I impose upon my indulgences and my everyday things. I try to avoid certain things at certain point of time, and with respect to, for example, following the lunar or the solar calendar panchankam, and based on that deciding certain activities like that. I try to incorporate the spiritual wisdom in the Vedic tradition as much as possible to my capacity in my everyday life, in my lifestyle, in the forms of injunctions and prohibitions. Things to be avoided, I refrain from, and things to be practiced and recommended, I try to practice as much as I can. Apart from my fitness stuff, this yoga, asanas, pranayama, all that is there. But apart from that, something connected with Ishvara, something connected with the spiritual dimension, something connected with the unknown side of the universe that is recommended by the Veda and the tradition and the practices. I try to imbibe them and do it with Shraddha regularly in the form of Anushtanam. And when I am doing that, I am not doing that with the desire for some miracle to happen in my life. I am doing it with an attitude of worship. And whatever result comes out of that, I offer that result also to the divine as an offering. And extending that to a little bit more, all the activities that I do, all the righteous activities that I do for earning wealth or name or fame, whatever I goal that I am striving for, I do that action as an act of worship, and I offer that goal, and the results, whatever results that I get from my action, I offer them I offer them back to the uh, back to the divine, to God, to Ishvara, which is represented, Ishvara represented in the form of my Ishtadevata, the tangible form of God that I relate with in my everyday life, in the form of my Ishtadevata, I offer, or an idea of God that I have incorporated in my spiritual life, I offer that through a kind of a through a kind of a simple ritual. I offer that result to the Lord. For example, if I get my salary, or if I get a check for something, I come and leave that check in the puja altar and then say, this is your blessing, and then take it as a blessing from Ishvara. Somebody gives me a gift, I offer it to the Lord and take it as a gift from the Lord. This kind of a practice, that all results are prasada from Ishvara, that kind of prasada buddhi, developing it, and whatever I desire, instead of grabbing it, I offer it to Ishvara. So that way, what happens? I develop a certain kind of an inner maturity that allows me to arise above likes and dislikes, which we will discuss in the next class. And also the next one, Kamye Matisarjitam, refrain from doing uh, manipulative spirituality. We will discuss about that. And awakening of the mind from likes and dislikes through offering the results of our action. The whole concept of Karma Yoga is discussed here. And where does it lead to? And the remaining part we will discuss in the coming class. With this, I will conclude the class. If you have any questions, you can write it down and bring it up in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamuduchyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.